Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a little bit different from my normal uploads. I will be sharing my personal opinions on the pros and cons of living in Tampa, Florida. If you're new to my channel, hi, welcome. I recently moved from Boston, Massachusetts to Tampa, Florida. I've been living in Tampa, Florida for about 4 months now, and it hasn't been the longest time that I've been living here, but I've lived here long enough to come up with my own opinions. And I do want to make a disclaimer, these are just my personal opinions. If you don't agree, then let's just agree to disagree. And a lot of my opinions are going to be based on the fact that I lived in Boston for the last 10 years. Boston is not the biggest city, but I like to call it New York's baby. It's not huge like New York, but it's still a city and it's still expensive. So a lot of what I'm going to be saying regarding Tampa is going to be in comparison to living in Boston. And also just living in the East Coast in general, because I've lived for the majority of my life on the East Coast, and living in the East Coast and then moving to the South is different. So with that being said, let's just dive right in. When you compare it to Boston, for example, rent in Boston is hella expensive. It just keeps going up every single year. Before we decided to move to Tampa, we actually looked at some apartments in Boston, and for what we wanted, which was a standard 2-bedroom, the rent was ridiculously high and it was just not worth it. And we didn't want to buy a house in the suburbs of Massachusetts because we just didn't see ourselves raising a family there. So that was one of the main reasons why we moved to Florida. In general, rents are much lower here. I think they're much lower compared to the rest of the nation, which is pretty nice. The rent is increasing though because everyone and their mother is moving to Florida like us. However, even if it does increase, it's still cheaper than living in other major cities like New York City and Boston. Although there's no income state tax, they get you in other ways. Obviously, I prefer taxes in Florida than Taxachusetts, as Massachusetts is normally called, because Massachusetts taxes you to breathe, honestly. For example, I do a lot of hauls on my channel and I buy a lot of things online, and before, when I lived in Boston, I would buy things online and would not really get hit with any sales tax. Like, I might get hit with just a little bit, but here when I make a huge order, I get hit with like $60 or $100 in sales taxes, which is something that I now have to factor in when I do make a haul, because I didn't have to do that before. I won't have to deal with snow this year, which is amazing. I think I've had enough snow to last a lifetime. And it is hot in Tampa. I mean, it's Florida. What do you expect? If you don't like the heat, then you shouldn't even be considering moving to Florida. But the heat really doesn't bother me, and it might be because I am Puerto Rican. I've spent summers in Puerto Rico all my life, and it's something that I'm used to. And I honestly can't wear my hair down. I have my hair in a bun 99.9% of the time, because if I let it down, it will turn into a poof ball. I'm hoping that's only during the hot summer months and not so much during the fall/winter months in Florida. I honestly find Boston summers 10 times worse than what I've been experiencing here so far, because I feel like the heat in Boston suffocates you and it makes you feel like you can't breathe, versus here there's always some sort of wind going on. There's always some sort of breeze that kind of cools you down. And since we're talking about the weather, I do have to mention hurricane season. I just added it into my little chart. I literally made a chart of the pros and cons of living here. Like, hurricane season is just part of living somewhere tropical. We have emergency supplies, we have a plan in place in case we do have to evacuate, so it's not something that worries me or stresses me out. I understand why it would stress someone out. And living on the East Coast, you get huge nor'easters, you get huge snowstorms, so you may not get hurricanes, but you get your own mother nature storms on the East Coast. We live in Tampa, so we can just hop on the highway, go to Clearwater, go to St. Petersburg, and that's really nice having that option. If we wake up one day and we're like, we want to go to the beach, we can literally just hop on the highway and go to the beach, and the beaches are beautiful. So that is obviously a pro of living in Florida. A con, I would say, is that although you can hop on the highway and go wherever you want, there is a lot of traffic, and this is something that took me by surprise. I don't know if it's always been like this. If you are a native Floridian and you've lived here all your life, let me know in the comments below. Has traffic gotten worse since everyone's moving down here, or is that just always been a thing? So that's something to consider if you are thinking of moving here and working in downtown. You're going to have to deal with traffic. I find like people are more open to having conversations. They're like, hi, how are you? Every time I talk to someone here, I feel like I've known them all my life. They're just so friendly and so open and so willing to help you out, versus living in Boston, it's not always like that. Like, you come across people obviously who are like that, but the majority of people are not. That also is a little bit of a con for me. Sometimes I just don't feel like having a conversation, and that can just be my antisocialness showing through. I don't want to say that I'm antisocial. The fact that I'm an introvert, that sounds a lot better. You know, sometimes you just want to get into an Uber, put on your AirPods, and just enjoy the ride versus having a full-blown deep-ass conversation. And that is something that I'm getting used to. But Puerto Rico is also like that. Like, you could be in a restaurant and someone will pass you by and be like, buen provecho, bendición, ¿cómo estás? And have a conversation like they know you, like they're your uncle or your aunt. And Florida just reminds me of Puerto Rico so much, and I think that's one of the reasons why I love living here, because it makes me feel like I'm living in Puerto Rico, you know? There's always a festival going on. You can go to the beach, you can go to the amusement parks like Busch Gardens. If you want to drive, you can go to Orlando. I feel like Florida has a lot more activities and experiences that you can do compared to Boston. You can get by, especially nowadays with Uber and Lyft, but that's going to cost you a pretty penny. I don't even want to tell you guys how much money we spent a month in Uber, but we spent quite a lot. We are in the process of learning how to drive. We used to take the train everywhere in Boston, so there was no need for us to learn how to drive, and eventually we do want to buy a car because it's something that you do need to get around, especially if you want to venture outside of Tampa and go into like Orlando or Miami, or want to do like a little road trip within Florida, or even if you live in the suburbs and you're commuting to downtown for work, you do need a car. I do have to mention that there is a trolley, but the trolley only goes so far, and it is free, which is amazing. It goes from downtown to Ybor City and back, so you can get around if you live near downtown, which we use the trolley a lot because we do live like in the city. Like I mentioned, there's always so many different activities that you can do, and a lot of them are super family friendly, which is nice. And I definitely see myself raising our family here and loving it. And I've also heard that the schools are pretty good and that there are a ton of different school districts that you can choose from. So that gives me peace of mind that when we do have a child and when it's time for them to attend school, that there are some good options out there for them. The biggest con for me of living here is the amount of mosquitoes. The fact that there are alligators. I mean, I don't think Tampa is known for alligators, but I did read an article online that alligators are known to be in the Hillsborough River, which we don't live far from the river. And it's a little scary to think about, but I don't really, knock on wood, hopefully we never have to come across an alligator, but it's a worthy mention since it is Florida after all. And then I would have to say that the bugs are always 10 times bigger anywhere in the tropics, and I'm so thankful that we haven't had to experience like any huge bugs in our apartment. They have pest control here. It's been good for us, but I do know that there are roaches, and the roaches here are like the ones in Puerto Rico, freaking massive and huge, and some of them fly, and I pray to God that I never have to come across a flying roach here. You just have to be on top of your pest control, and if you have an issue, just get on the phone, get pest control down, and you should be fine, hopefully. right after I started talking about roaches and mosquitoes is that it's actually pretty clean. Talking specifically about the downtown area, I haven't been to every neighborhood in Tampa. I'm not 100% sure yet on which ones are the good neighborhoods, which ones are the bad neighborhoods. But from my experience going to downtown, the Riverwalk area, and where we live, it's actually pretty clean. It's very rare when we see trash on the ground, when we see litter on the ground, which is really nice, especially again, coming from Boston where you do see a lot of trash on the floor. And it's not always the cleanest just because it's a big city, just like New York City. So it's a really nice change of scenery to have everything be clean and tidy and not a lot of trash litter everywhere. There are not a lot of CVS's or Walgreens in downtown or in its vicinity. I need to carry around a bottle of water because it's going to be a minute before I come across a convenience store, and that is something that's annoying, but it's something that I'm getting used to, and I really don't know why that's the case. Downtown here is not huge and the Riverwalk is not huge, so I understand why they wouldn't have a million CVS's or a million Walgreens, but I wish they had like more than one, at least more than one in the downtown area, because that is really annoying. But that's a con. Maybe it'll change in the future as more people move here and as they build more apartments in downtown. You can literally meet anyone from different walks of life. We've met people that have moved from Boston as well, that have moved from like Vegas, California, like older Gen X, Millennial, Gen Z. Not to say that Boston isn't diverse, because it is, but I feel like Boston is a lot of college students. Again, we didn't live in the suburbs. We lived 5 minutes by train from downtown. Maybe that's why I feel like all I used to see were college students. And I also worked in hospitals and hired a lot of college students. So maybe that's why I feel like that. But I feel like there's just so much more diversity here in Tampa. And if you are bilingual, there are a lot of job opportunities here, from what I've heard, that companies do like to hire bilingual people because there is such a huge population that speaks Spanish here, which is really nice if you're bilingual. That will honestly just depend on the job that you have, or the job that you're looking for, the industry that you're working for, and your years of experience. Cost of living is lower here, rent is lower, so it would make sense that salaries wouldn't be as high as the ones in Boston. That's just my personal opinion, and I feel like your dollar is stretched a lot further here when you compare it to Boston or New York City. You can get a lot more for your buck. That is a factor that you definitely have to consider before you move to Florida. And obviously, before you make a decision to move anywhere, you should be looking at the job market first to make sure that you are able to find a job that will keep your lifestyle the same or better it. So definitely, before you decide to move to Tampa, look at the job market, look at your industry. Is it growing in Tampa? Is it declining? Before you make a huge move, because you might find that salaries are lower, but also just remember that rent prices are a lot lower and you can get a beautiful home for a lot cheaper than other parts of the country. But that's pretty much it for today's video. I really hope you guys learned a little bit more about living in Tampa. Again, these are just my opinions. You may have different opinions based on your experience living in Florida, but I love living in Tampa. It's been a great 4 months living here, and I don't see us moving out anytime soon, so I highly recommend for more people to move down to Tampa because it's been great. But if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I would love to have you a part of my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.